Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are heading deep, deep into the woods. And I don't mean, a pleasant Sunday stroll with a granola bar and a water bottle where you're checking your step counter every 10 minutes.
Yeah, at all.
I mean the kind of woods where the trees are ancient, the rain is just relentless, and the shadows, well, the shadows might just be hiding a giant, hairy, bipedal mystery that it's haunted the American imagination for centuries.
It is certainly a dense thicket of a story we have to get through today. We're looking at a narrative that blends high-octane adventure, cryptozoology, and some very, very unsettling government overreach.
Yeah.
It's a collision of genres that really shouldn't work together, but somehow in the source material we're covering, it just creates this perfect storm of paranoia and wilderness survival.
It really does have everything. We're talking about a collision between ancient legends, specifically the Sasquatch, and this very modern paranoia. And right in the middle of it all, we have a skeptical television host, an obsessed academic, and a 14-year-old Native American scout who might be the coolest, snarkiest character I've read about in a long, long time.
He's fantastic. And it is a fascinating case study in conflicting worldviews. That's really the lens I want to use for this deep dive. On one side, you have the natural world, right? It's represented by the deep forests, the indigenous protectors, the animals themselves. And then on the other side, you have the artificial world technology, heavy weaponry, federal agents, and this burning desire to control what cannot be understood.
Exactly. And the central mystery is just so juicy. You have to ask, is there a giant ape man roaming the Pacific Northwest? Or is there something even more sinister at play? Something involving armed mercenaries who look like they just stepped out of a bad 80s action movie?
But they're not.
No. They carry badges that say they own the place. Because let's be honest, usually when you hear Bigfoot story, you think blurry photos and, some guys in camo drinking beer.
Exactly. You don't think tactical espionage.
You never think tactical espionage.
And that is the core conflict we really need to unpack, because as we're going to see, the monster in the woods isn't always the creature with the fur. Sometimes it's the guy in the suit holding a government mandate. The very definition of monster just shifts constantly throughout this entire narrative.
Okay, so let's introduce our players. We are diving into the accounts of Annja Creed. Now, for those who haven't followed her adventures before, Annja is an archaeologist. She hosts a cable TV show. It's called Chasing History's Monsters.
A great title.
It is. She travels the world looking for myths and legends. But here's the kicker. She is, and this is kind of surprising, a massive skeptic when it comes to things like Bigfoot.
Which is such an important distinction to make right off the bat. She isn't a believer chasing ghosts or, trying to prove some fringe theory. She's a woman of science and history. She looks for facts.
Tangible evidence.
Yes. Pottery shards, bone fragments, carbon dating. She's dragged into this specific mess, not by curiosity, but by obligation to her friend, Jenny Chu.
And Jenny is the complete foil here. She is the believer. She's an academic, but she's willing to, how do we put this nicely, fudge the truth a little bit to get university funding.
A little bit. I think that's being generous.
Okay, maybe a lot. She tells her department head she's doing legitimate research on, migratory patterns of bears or something.
Right, something plausible.
But really, she's out there hunting for Sasquatch. And all because some guy she met online named David promised her photographic evidence.
It is the classic setup for a disaster, isn't it? You have the skeptic who doesn't want to be there and the enthusiast who wants to be there for all the wrong reasons. Jenny represents that blinding obsession. She wants the discovery so badly that she ignores safety protocols, she lies to her superiors, and she trusts a complete stranger on the internet.
Which, rule number one of the internet, maybe don't fly to a remote forest to meet a guy named David who says he has pictures of a monster. But we'll get to David later. Much more on David later.
Oh, yes.
Let's start with Annja. She's in Brooklyn. She's hiding out her luff because, and I love this detail, she got a terrible haircut.
It's so relatable.
It's the most relatable motivation for leaving town I've ever heard.
It adds a very human touch to a character who is otherwise, quite formidable. She isn't leaving on some grand crusade. She's fleeing a bad bangs situation.
Exactly. But she gets this email from Jenny, who is already out in the field in the Pacific Northwest, and just something in the tone of it worries her. It's a little too frantic. So she flies out, and right away, the second she arrives, the vibe is just off.
It's more than off. It is immediately tangibly threatening. Annja arrives at the trailhead, and she stops at this, the kind of place, a combined gas station and grocery store.
Oh, yeah. Flickering neon sign. Shelves full of dusty canned beans from 1992.
That's the one. And the shopkeeper there is this gnarled old local, and he gives her a warning that just sets the tone for the entire deep dive.
He does. He warns her to stay on the trail.
But the way the source material describes it, he isn't giving friendly hiking advice. He's issuing a grim ultimatum. He describes the forest as a living, almost malevolent thing. He says, if you step off this path, the forest will swallow you whole.
The forest will swallow you whole. That's cheerful.
It frames the wilderness not as a park to be enjoyed, but as a domain with its own rules, its own agenda. He suggests that civilization is a very, very thin line, literally the width of the trail. And once you step off that asphalt or that beaten dirt path, you're in a place that does not care about you.
It's a very Lovecraftian view of nature.
Indifferent and vast and ancient. Exactly.
Well, and Annja feels it. I mean, she's walking down this overgrown trail heading toward where Jenny's camp is supposed to be, and she starts getting that feeling, that prickle on the back of your neck, the feeling that she's being watched.
She hears twigs snapping behind her. Now, Annja is a pro. She's been in dangerous situations all over the world. She knows when she's being tailed. It's not just paranoia.
No, it's instinct.
She does. And this creates immediate tension for the reader. For us, is it the creature? Is it a bear? She stops. She listens. The source material does a fantastic job of isolating the sounds of the woods, the wind in the canopy, the drip of water from the ferns, and then the rhythmic crunch of footsteps that stop when she stops.
That's the creepy part, the mirroring. So she's bracing herself. She spins around, ready for a confrontation. She's expecting, I don't know, a 600-pound ape.
Right. The thing she came here not believing in.
And what she finds is a 14-year-old kid with spiky black hair.
And this is Joey. And I think Joey is absolutely crucial to understanding the heart of this entire story.
Joey. I love this kid. He calls himself Creeping Wolf. He's got this whole persona built up.
He is a bridge between two worlds. I really believe that. On one hand, he's a modern teenager. He talks about downloading movies. He complains about getting paid. He's got that wonderful teenage snark. But on the other hand, he is of Apache descent, raised by his grandfather to learn traditional tracking and spiritual skills. He claims to be a stealth master.
Which is just hilarious because Annja points out immediately that she heard him coming a mile away. She's like, kid, you sounded like a bulldozer in a leaf pile.
Right. And Joey gets so defensive about it, he insists, I move pretty quiet. It's a great moment of levity, but it also establishes his character arc. He thinks he's ready for the woods, but he's still learning. He's arrogant, but you can see he has potential. He's guiding Annja to Jenny's camp because, well, he knows the layout. He's a local scout.
But all that charm, all that levity, it just wears off pretty quickly once they actually reach the camp. Because things go from spooky walk in the woods with a funny kid to tactical hostage situation in about 3 seconds flat.
Precisely. They arrive at the clearing where Jenny and her grad students are supposed to be camped. It should be bustling, people cooking food, looking at maps, the sounds of a research camp.
Normalcy.
Instead, it is dead silent, eerily silent. Jenny is gone. The students are huddled together, just terrified. And suddenly, Annja is looking down the barrel of a rifle.
And let's be clear about the hardware here. This isn't a tranquilizer dart. It's not a hunting rifle for deer. We're talking military-grade assault weapons. 3 men have taken over the camp. And these guys, they aren't park rangers. They are not friendly locals. They are armed, organized, and extremely hostile.
The description in the source material is very specific here. They're wearing tactical gear, but no insignia, no flags, nothing to identify them. They move with coordination.
Yeah.
This isn't a ragged bunch of poachers. This is a paramilitary unit.
100%.
And the leader of this group delivers a message to Annja that is just chilling in its simplicity. He tells her to tell Jenny, back off. These woods belong to us.
These woods belong to us. I mean, that is such a loaded phrase. Who claims ownership of an entire forest?
That is the key question, isn't it? It shifts the whole narrative from a scientific expedition or a monster hunt to a territorial dispute. Usually in these kinds of stories, the threat is the monster defending its territory. Here, it's humans defending a perimeter.
Yeah.
They aren't just camping, they are guarding something.
And the escalation is just instant. They threaten violence. They're holding civilians at gunpoint. Annja immediately realizes she can't fight them right there, not with the students in the line of fire. So she just shifts into negotiator mode.
Which highlights her experience. I mean, she doesn't panic. She assesses the threat. She identifies the variables. She realizes the students are liabilities in this situation. She needs to get them out, so she negotiates their release.
Yeah, she cuts a deal.
She gets the gunman to agree to let the students leave if they pack up and go immediately. No questions, no police.
She sends Joey to lead the students back to safety, back to town. He's their guide out. But she stays behind because Jenny is still missing. And Annja is not the kind of person who leaves her friend behind, even if that friend is an annoying academic who completely lied to get her there in the first place.
And this decision coincides with a drastic shift in the environment. It's almost like the forest itself is reacting. As the students leave and Annja's left alone to search for Jenny, the weather just turns. A massive storm hits the mountain. And this is so important because it strips away all the modern advantages.
Everything.
It is pouring rain. Visibility is zero. The temperature is dropping rapidly. Annja is forced into pure, unadulterated survival mode.
The description of her survival skills here is really cool, and I think it's worth dwelling on for a second because it shows just how capable she is. She doesn't have a tent. The gunman took the entire camp. She doesn't have a sleeping bag. She is completely out in the elements.
She reverts to basic, almost prehistoric survivalism. She finds a redwood tree, one of those massive ancient giants with the really thick bark. She finds a hollow at the base, an overhang that provides some shelter from the direct downpour. But the cold is the real killer here. Hypothermia is a much bigger threat than the gunman at this point.
And she does something that sounds, absolutely insane to a modern city dweller like me.
Yeah.
She strips naked.
It sounds so counterintuitive, but it's a legitimate survival tactic, and a critical one. Her clothes are soaked through. Wet clothes draw heat away from the body, something like 20, maybe 25 times faster than air. If she keeps them on, she freezes to death, period.
So it's a choice between dignity and survival.
And she chooses survival. She strips, wrings out the clothes as best she can, and then builds a fire using dry shavings from the inside of the redwood bark to dry the clothes and, more importantly, to warm herself.
It's a very primal image, isn't it? Just her, the fire, the storm, and this ancient tree. She's literally stripped of her modern armor, her modern identity.
It grounds the story. Before we get into the really supernatural or the conspiratorial elements, we see the physical reality of the forest. It is cold, it is wet, and it is profoundly dangerous. And it's in this vulnerable state, alone by a fire, waiting for her clothes to dry, that she has her first encounter with the beast.
She hears something stalking her in the dark. And again, she's thinking, is this it? Is this the Sasquatch? She hears a crack, a low growl. She tries to climb the tree to get a better vantage point, which is impressive considering the conditions. But the branch is wet, it breaks, and she falls right into the path of a wolf.
And not just any wolf. This is a massive predator. The source material describes it as huge, gray, with yellow eyes, and it is snarling, ready to attack. And Annja is on the ground, completely vulnerable.
Well, not completely. We have to talk about the sword, because this is the one part of Annja's character that is pure fantasy, but in the context of her world, it's just a fact of her existence. She carries, or rather, she summons a sword.
Yes. It is heavily implied to be the sword of Joan of Arc. It is a mystical artifact that bonded to her in a previous adventure. She can essentially pull it out of somewhere else, out of thin air, into her hand. It's sharp, it's seemingly unbreakable, and it's her primary weapon.
So just picture this scene for a second. A woman in the middle of a torrential storm, maybe half-dressed, suddenly holding a gleaming, ancient, medieval sword, facing down a giant wolf. It's metal as hell.
It is a striking image. The clash of the ancient weapon and the ancient predator. She's absolutely ready to kill the wolves to survive. She has the sword raised for a killing blow. But then Joey reappears.
Joey? I thought he went back to town with the students.
He did, but he circled back, he told them the way, and then he came back. He couldn't leave Annja alone out there. And he steps out of the shadows, actually living up to his creeping wolf name this time, and he intervenes. He puts himself directly between Annja and the wolf.
And Annja is, of course, freaking out, thinking the wolf is going to tear this kid apart. But Joey, he just talks to it.
This is such a critical moment for that nature versus artificial theme we talk about. Joey reveals that the wolf isn't a monster, it's a friend. His name is Chihawk. And Joey has this incredible deep bond with him. He makes a specific sound, a sort of bark, and speaks in a different language, likely Apache or a dialect his grandfather taught him. And this snarling predator just melts.
It completely transforms. It becomes like a big puppy. It lowers its head, it whines, it lets Joey come up and pet him.
Joey calls Chihawk a protector of the forest. He directly challenges Annja's perception, her immediate resort to violence. He says humans spend too much time thinking animals are different from them, that we're separate, but we are all the same, made by the Creator. He bridges that gap between Annja, the intruder with the weapon, and the wild animal. It creates this brief, beautiful moment of peace in the middle of all this chaos.
It's such a cool contrast. You have the men with the guns who want to own the woods, who see everything as a threat. And then you have Joey who just exists with the woods. He doesn't need a gun to control the wolf. He just needs respect and understanding.
Exactly. But the peace doesn't last long, because the central problem remains. Jenny is still missing. And the storm has washed away all the physical tracks. Joey is a good tracker, a really good tracker. But even he admits that in this rain, there is nothing to see. The mud has turned to soup. Any scent is long gone.
So standard search and rescue is completely out the window, and this leads us to one of the most fascinating and frankly weirdest sections of the source material, the shift from physical tracking to spirit tracking. Joey says, I can't find her, but my grandfather can.
So they trek through the storm to his grandfather's house. And talk about atmosphere. The place is this rundown shack on the outside, peeling paint, overflowing rain barrels. It looks totally abandoned. But you step inside. And it's warm. There are these beautiful, rich tapestries on the walls. The smell of herbs is in the air, a roaring fire in the hearth.
And this is where we meet Dancing Deer. He's Joey's grandfather. He's an elder, a respected one, and he's in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down.
Dancing Deer is another critical character here. He challenges the modern rational mindset immediately. Annja comes in with her frantic, logical energy. She wants a plan. She wants coordinates. She wants to do something. And Dancing Deer is just sitting there. He almost scoffs at her need to rationalize everything.
He's like you city people, always thinking with your clocks and your maps. He dismisses her panic. He decides the only way to find Jenny is to perform a ritual. And Annja is, deeply skeptical, obviously. She's thinking, great, now we're doing magic tricks while my friend freezes to death in a ditch somewhere.
But what choice does she have? She participates. She doesn't have another option. And the ritual is described with such incredible sensory detail. The burning of sage, that sharp, earthy, cleansing smell, the rhythmic drumming that Dancing Deer performs, the low, melodic chanting. It's a process designed to induce a trance state.
And it works. Annja, our hard-nosed, evidence-based archaeologist, gets pulled right into it. She describes it not as falling asleep, but as a feeling of floating out of her chair.
It is a classic description of an out-of-body experience or astral projection. The source material treats this as an objective reality within the story. She isn't dreaming. She is traveling. Her consciousness drifts out of the house, over the forest, over the hills, moving through the storm without feeling the cold or the rain.
And the mechanism for finding Jenny is so interesting. It's not visual. She can't just look for her like scanning a crowd with binoculars. She has to tune in to Jenny's emotion.
Fear. She has to track the fear.
That gave me actual chills. She finds Jenny not by looking for a red jacket or a human shape, but by searching for the terrified, panicked pulse of a friend lost in the dark. It's like a psychic beacon.
And she finds her. She sees this image of Jenny in a dark place. It could be a cave, it's high up, maybe above the tree line where the air is thin. And she communicates with her, but not with words, telepathically. She urges her to wake up, to move, to leave that place. When Annja wakes up from the trance, she's exhausted but also refreshed, and Dancing Deer just calmly confirms she successfully spirit-tracked her friend.
It's a huge moment for Annja's character. I mean, think about it. She's an archaeologist. She deals in bones and pottery shards, tangible things you can touch and date and measure. And here she is, astral projecting through the Oregon woods to find her friend.
It highlights the central theme of this deep dive, the blurring of reality. You have the hard, cold steel of the gunman's rifles, and then you have this intangible, undeniable spiritual connection. Both are presented as equally real in this narrative. And the expert in me has to point out, this completely validates the indigenous knowledge of Dancing Deer over the so-called technological superiority of the agents.
Oh, that's a great point.
The agents have satellites, they have sensors, but they can't find anything. Dancing Deer has a drum and some sage, and he finds the target in minutes.
Low-tech beats high-tech because it understands the environment on a fundamentally different level. So, guided by this vision, Annja and Joey go back out into the storm. And sure enough, following the path Annja saw in her trance, they find Jenny.
She's stumbling down the mountain. She's alive, which is a miracle, but she is in very bad shape. Hypothermic, confused, and absolutely terrified. But once they get her warmed up a bit, get some shelter around her, she has a crazy story to tell.
This is what we're calling the abduction theory. Jenny claims she was taken.
She is completely adamant about this. She said she was scooped up, just grabbed by a massive presence. She describes moving at an impossible speed through the forest, faster than any human could run, faster than a horse, and being deposited gently in a cave. She didn't get a clear look, but she felt the fur, the sheer size, the muscle. She is 100% convinced it was the Sasquatch.
Look at the reaction here because it's so funny. Joey, the kid who talks to wolves and believes in spirit walking, is the skeptic. He thinks she was just hallucinating from the hypothermia. He suggests maybe she was sleepwalking and found the cave herself.
Which is a delightful irony, isn't it? The kid who just watched Annja Astral Project across the mountain is like, giant ape man. Nah, that's crazy talk. It shows that even within the believer camp, there are lines. Joey sees the forest as natural, even with its spirits. A giant ape man doesn't fit his natural model. But for Jenny, whose obsession brought her here in the first place, every shadow is now a Sasquatch. She interprets her trauma through the lens of her obsession.
So the three of them are huddled together. They build a concealed lean-to because they're still worried about the gunmen. They're exhausted. They're cold. And just as they're trying to get some sleep, the howling starts.
And this is not the wolf howling from before. This is different. The text describes it as a cross between a coyote and a banshee. A screaming, unnatural, agonizing sound.
And then comes the smell.
Yeah.
A horrific stench.
The classic Bigfoot trope. It always comes with a smell. Like rotting garbage and wet musk.
Jenny is terrified. She's whispering, "He's here. He's come back for me."
Yeah.
And then something starts tearing at their shelter. It's clawing at the branches. It sounds huge. It's trying to get in.
The tension here is just masterfully done. You have the sensory overload, the terrible noise, the awful smell, the physical destruction of their only safe space. Annja decides she has to act. She summons the sword again. She bursts out of the roof of the shelter, ready to slay a monster. She's expecting to finally come face to face with the Sasquatch.
And here is the twist that just breaks your heart. It isn't Bigfoot, it's Chihawk.
The wolf. But he isn't attacking them. He's dying.
The description is brutal, and we have to warn listeners, this is the heavy part of the story. Half of his body has been destroyed. He's been mauled, or more likely, shot by heavy caliber weapons. The monster trying to get into the shelter was just a wounded animal seeking help from his friend, from Joey.
This is the emotional pivot of the entire story. The fear just evaporates and is immediately replaced by horror and grief. The smell wasn't Bigfoot. It was the smell of blood and death and infection. Joey is absolutely devastated. He realizes immediately who did this. It wasn't another animal, not a natural predator. It was the men from the camp.
The gunmen. They shot the wolf. Probably just for sport or because it got too close to whatever they were guarding.
It represents the sheer wanton cruelty of the invaders. They don't respect the forest. They don't understand it, so they kill what they don't understand. And Chihawk, who Joey called a protector, has been reduced to this suffering, broken wreck.
And then comes the hard choice. Chihawk is suffering terribly. He can't survive these wounds. Joey is just sobbing, holding his friend's head. He looks at Annja at the sword in her hand, and he begs her to end it.
It is a mercy killing, but it weighs so heavily on Annja. She has to use this mystical weapon, a symbol of justice and power, Joan of Arc's sword, to put down a dying animal. It is a tragic, intimate act of violence. It's not glorious combat. It's just sad and necessary.
And it changes Joey completely. The fun movie-quoting teenager is gone. In his place is a warrior. He stands up, wipes his eyes, and he vows vengeance. He says something like, "If it's my time to die in battle, then so be it."
He is tapping into that Apache lineage he talked about earlier. But now it isn't a game or a persona. It's war. He tells Annja and Jenny to follow his trail markers, his cairns, back to the road. But he refuses to go with them. He just vanishes into the woods to hunt down the armed men who killed his friend.
That is such a heavy, powerful turn. The kid basically goes Rambo because they killed his dog. And honestly, I get it.
It's a powerful moment of transition. He's stepping into a war to defend his home and avenge his kin. He leaves cairns, these little piles of rocks, to guide Annja and Jenny out, showing he still cares about their safety, but his own mission is completely changed. He's a hunter now.
So Annja and Jenny are alone again. They follow the cairns. They stumble out of the woods, traumatized, exhausted, covered in mud, and God knows what else. They finally make it to the main road. And who pulls over to pick them up? A truck. And who is driving that truck?
David.
David, the online contact, the guy who basically catfished Jenny into coming out here in the first place.
The man responsible for this entire mess, indirectly.
But surprise, he's not some weirdo living in a basement with tinfoil on the windows. He's the handsome, charming local sheriff.
Which is a twist in and of itself. He represents the law. He is the authority figure they should have gone to from the start. And his explanation for missing their meeting is vague police stuff, he says. But he's smooth. He charms Jenny immediately. And he confirms he has the evidence. He says, it's back at the station. I'll show you.
So they're driving back to town. Jenny is swooning a little because, let's be honest, a handsome sheriff is a big step up from an anonymous internet stranger. Annja is suspicious, but she's just relieved to be out of the rain and in a vehicle. And then, boom.
The truck explodes.
Just blows up while they're driving down the highway.
And this isn't a flat tire or an engine stall. The truck flips multiple times. It is a catastrophic, deliberate explosion. It is a clear assassination attempt.
Annja is pinned under the wreckage. David has to use a car jack to physically lift the truck off her leg. And in a moment of just bizarre levity amidst the chaos, because Annja's life is apparently ridiculous, she realizes the explosion blew her pants clean off.
It's such a weird detail, but it highlights the sheer violence of the blast. The concussive force literally stripped her. They survive, miraculously, largely due to Annja's incredible toughness and David's quick thinking with the jack.
Yeah.
But the implications are terrifying.
Right. Someone planted a bomb on the sheriff's truck.
This just escalates the threat level to an entirely new place. We went from intimidation in the woods to animal cruelty, and now we are at domestic terrorism. Someone's absolutely desperate to stop anyone from finding out the truth about what is in those woods. And since David is the sheriff, it implies that whoever is doing this doesn't care about local law enforcement. They are above the law.
So they limp back to town. They cross a bridge. They get to the police station. And Annja is furious. She's done being a victim. She wants answers. She kicks open the door to David's office wearing borrowed clothes or whatever she could find. And guess who is sitting there?
The gunman. The leader of the mercenaries who held them at gunpoint in the woods. The man who gave the order to back off.
Sitting in the sheriff's office, feet up on the desk. Like they're old buddies just hanging out.
This is the moment. This is the reveal of the conspiracy. These aren't poachers. They aren't some private security firm. They identify themselves as agents Simpson and Baker. Federal agents.
And they are so smug. Simpson is the talker. He's arrogant, dismissive. He threatens deadly force. He basically tells Annja, we own you, we own this town, and there's nothing you can do about it. Baker is the silent, menacing one, the muscle.
But we have to dig into the why here. Because this is the intellectual core of the entire deep dive. Why is the federal government blowing up trucks and shooting wolves in the middle of Oregon?
They claim national security.
Specifically, border security. And I want to pause on this logic because it is so twisted, but in a way, so perfectly consistent with bureaucratic paranoia.
Okay, break it down for us. How is Bigfoot a national security threat? Is he a communist? Did he not pay his taxes?
No. It's about the border. They argue that if a giant ape-man, a biological entity that is 8 feet tall and weighs 600 pounds, can cross the border from Canada into the United States completely undetected by satellites, thermal imaging, ground sensors, and border patrols, then the entire system is flawed.
I'm following so far.
Their logic is this. If Bigfoot can do it, terrorists can do it. If a giant smelly animal can evade our trillion-dollar surveillance net, then that animal possesses a form of biological stealth that the government needs to understand and replicate.
That is wild. They want to capture Bigfoot not to study it for science or biology, but to study its evasion capabilities. They want to weaponize Bigfoot's hide-and-seek skills.
Precisely. They view the Sasquatch as a piece of living, breathing, biological stealth technology. They don't see a living creature. They see a security breach. They see a hole in their fence that needs to be plugged.
That is the most government thing I've ever heard in my entire life. We can't find this thing, so we must arrest it and study its sneaking ability so we can hide our tanks better.
It is the ultimate clash of the natural and the artificial. They are trying to apply a cold, military-industrial framework to a mythical, natural entity. And Annja calls them out on it. She brings up the wolf. She brings up their cruelty. She screams at them, "You're killing innocent animals and blowing up sheriffs for this."
But Simpson just hides behind the Patriot Act. It's his shield. He says national security overrides everything. He threatens to disappear them, to make them vanish if they talk. And David, the sheriff, the guy who's supposed to be the law in this town, is completely powerless.
It is a feeling of total systemic helplessness. The local law, represented by David, cannot stop the federal government represented by Simpson. The system is broken. David clearly hates these guys. He knows they blew up his truck, almost killed him and his guests. But if he moves against them, They will end him. It's made very clear.
So the agents leave. They basically say, get out of town and shut up or else. Annja and Jenny are exhausted, they're dirty, they're traumatized. They retreat to the local hotel, Milton's Hotel, just to regroup and figure out what to do next.
And this brings us to the final, and maybe most important, grounding beat of the story. They meet the owners, Sheila and Tom, just normal, decent people. Sheila is this wonderful, motherly fighter who gives them food, draws them baths, and gives Annja a pair of borrowed slippers from a Vegas hotel. Because remember, Annja still has no pants.
Which is a nice little callback.
Like-
But over breakfast the next morning, the truth comes out. But in the most casual way imaginable. Sheila is chatting with them, pouring coffee, and Jenny, who just can't help herself, mentions the whole Bigfoot hunt. And Sheila's just like, oh yeah, Bigfoot, I've seen him.
Just like that. No drama. No ominous music. Just a neighborly anecdote, like talking about a raccoon getting in the trash.
She tells them the blueberry story. She says she was out picking blueberries one summer. In a patch not far from town, she looked up, and there he was, a Sasquatch, just eating berries.
And notice the details she uses. She doesn't describe glowing red eyes or massive fangs or a terrifying roar. She says he was just sitting there, stripping the bushes with his big hands, and he had little bits of blue all around his hairy chin.
That image, it just completely deconstructs the entire monster myth they've been chasing. You have the United States government out there with thermal scopes and bombs and federal agents terrified of this national security threat. And then you have Sheila, who saw him looking like a messy toddler who just got into a pie.
It creates this incredibly stark contrast. To the government, the Sasquatch is a target, a system to be reverse engineered. To Jenny, it's a mystical, career-making obsession. But to the local woman who actually lives there, it's just a neighbor. A weird neighbor who plays loud music sometimes, or in this case, eats your berries. But not a monster.
It wasn't a monster at all. It was just an animal.
And that is the aha moment. That's the thesis of the whole story. The real monster in this narrative was never the Sasquatch. The Sasquatch is just an animal, a part of the ecosystem existing in its environment. The monsters were the humans, Simpson and Baker, who brought violence, paranoia, and destruction into the woods.
Man, that really, really puts it all in perspective. You have these high-tech, heavily armed agents running around terrified of a berry eater.
It highlights the sheer absurdity of their mission. They are destroying the very thing they are trying to understand because they can only view it through the lens of threat and control. They're projecting their own violence and paranoia onto the natural world.
So let's wrap this up. What an absolute ride. We had a fake expedition that turned into a real survival situation. We had a spiritual awakening with amber astral projecting. We had the tragic, heartbreaking loss of Chihawk R.I.P. to the best wolf ever. And we had a heavy-handed, brutal government cover-up.
And so many loose threads. Joey's still out there hunting the agents. We don't know what happened to him. Did he find them? Did he exact his revenge? Did they get him? The source material just leaves that hanging.
And David, the sheriff, he supposedly has evidence at the station that he never got to show them. The police stuff he mentioned, we never got to see it because the agents were there and then everything just went sideways.
Exactly. The story isn't over. It feels like the opening salvo of a much larger conflict between Annja's world of archaeology and ethics and this covert agency that operates outside the law.
But the big takeaway for me is definitely that contrast between the natural world and the human need to dominate it. I mean, the government couldn't track Jenny, all their tech failed, but the drum, the sage, and the empathy, that worked.
Absolutely. The government is terrified of a creature simply because it can hide from them. And it raises the question, what does that say about our over-reliance on technology? We fear what we cannot track. We fear the unknown. But as Sheila showed us, the unknown might just be sitting in a field eating blueberries.
And what about Annja's sword? Does it play a role in this spirit world that the government can't touch? It seems like there are forces at play here, ancient mystical forces that the Patriot Act can't possibly regulate.
Forces that answer to a much older law than anything passed in Washington, D.C. The sword, the spirit tracking, the bond between Joey and the wolf. These are things that Simpson and Baker cannot quantify and therefore cannot control. And that, I think, is their ultimate weakness.
Well, that is all the time we have for this deep dive. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and if you're ever out in the woods and you see a blueberry bush, maybe check for hairy chins before you start picking.
Indeed. And maybe leave the tactical gear at home.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next deep dive.